Hey guys, I hope we're doing all right. I'm back after a long break. I think that might be a long break as well. Straight after this one to do a little podcast. And I want to do this podcast because I feel like for the message I want to say is quite valuable to me at this stage in my life. And I feel us as dyslexics can possibly relate or possibly kind of search for that feeling and find it and kind of give us maybe a little direction going forward. Um, and that's one of the reasons. Another reason is I want to like transition my period because I feel like now in this transition mode, if that makes sense, to kind of like moving forward with understanding myself and my well, because you could say career or you could say things, but anyway, guys, I hope we enjoy this episode. And this episode is really about purpose. This is really about how to know when you're on the right path as a dyslexic and as on this journey moving forward. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy it. And yeah.
So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast.
So, guys, we're talking about how can we find our purpose, or how do we know when we found our purpose? First off, answering this question as dyslexics, because we're dyslexics, we're different, we think differently, operate differently. And to give you a bit of backstory about why am I talking about this and the kind of things I want to go through, and I don't want to. This is a free flow. This is free flow, and this is the question that we're answering. But there's going to be a complex answer with multiple different questions we're going to ask and different answers we're going to come to. Because recently I've been saying about doing coaching for ages, and the last few months, by last month or so, I've done it. And when I say I've done it, I've had a lot of coaching. I had like 20, 30 different probably calls or scheduled calls. Talking with people from parents to coaching this little kid, to like and a lot of adults with dyslexia and people who sort of like younger adults and older adults, and being in a position because I've been on like absolutely obsessed about dyslexia since I was 17 years old, like having it my whole life, very severe, and then being obsessed about helping others with it since I was 17 years old. And like with this coaching, I'll be out like I think I should have done it years ago. And it's when, just to tell you a little story, like, so with the coaching, it's like I've been wanting to help people with it for ages. Like, oh, I've got this thing that I have experience and I want to help people. And I spent 3 years writing a book called Conquering Dyslexia. Check it out. And I spent years and years learning about different websites, when I say websites, we can say funnels, we can say different things to help me get my message out there. In like building videos, making series, doing this, doing that, creating all these ideas. And basically having an idea about how I can help people with dyslexia, execute on the idea, and saying to people, look, this is what I've got, get it. And now I'm doing coaching. I've done coaching before in the past for a little bit, and in my head I'm like, okay, just coaching for a little bit. But now I've kind of realised that it's everything. Because when I'm doing it, it's like when I get off a call with someone who I feel like needs it or feel like would benefit a lot from it, because they're at the stage where they're hurting so much. There's this massive cloud of fog where all these different directions they can go in, like whether they're adult, they're a kid, and they just don't know where to go. And they understand about this. Yes, dyslexia is different, and it's like my confidence with my self-esteem. What am I going to do now? And I've tried and struggled in the past, and it's hard to make my way in life being dyslexic in this world that we're living. and talk to them and sort of like help them through it, and like talk to them about what dyslexia is, talk to them about how it really affects us, because people don't, like, when I say people don't understand, it's that people, they have their own life experiences, and then they're learning from what else is out there to help them with this, with dyslexia. And when I say I'm being honest, when you go out to search for dyslexia, in terms of learning about it, in terms of then, there's almost nowhere that gives you the real answer about how dyslexia affects our lives. And when I say what I say, when the real answer, there's loads of definitions, there's all this, there is loads of help out there. But how I, not, it's like how I see it, but it's kind of like how it is, and it's how people need to see dyslexia. It's that it's in two massive halves. The first half of dyslexia is the actual dyslexia part. And if you were born with dyslexia, there was debate whether you're like 6 months old, you develop whatever. It doesn't matter, you're born with it. You have dyslexia, and this affects your way you visualize, the way you look at things, the way you think, the way you make connections, and your sounding out of words, and a lot of image. Anyway, the actual dyslexia part, and there's so many terminology for that. There's so much understanding. Okay, these are cognitive strengths. These are this things. These are this things, and there's so many books and articles about that on dyslexia, in terms of on building, like, what is dyslexia and how does it affect the brain. And then that's one side of dyslexia, and then there's the other side of dyslexia that's equally as important, but because people don't give it the full attention and it deserves, it's way much more important because it's way much more lacking. And it's easy, like, directly 50-50. Once you understand them, you know how to treat them, and then they will be 50-50 as important. But the other side is the emotional side of dyslexia. It's basically growing up, you're neurodiverse, and growing up in a world that's neurotypical, and people saying and acting like as you should be a certain way. Like saying everyone else in the class can do A, B, and C, and you can't do any of them. And then going through those experiences, we have to create meanings for those experiences. And the meaning is, well, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm different, I'm awkward. And going through all that. And then that would cause us to believe things about ourselves. Because now I'm saying, like, if you believe you can or if you believe you can't, you're both right. Because if you believe you can pass the test, you will. Because you put in the work, the effort. But if you believe you can't, you won't put in the effort. And then, whether you believe you can and you pass the test, you prove yourself right. Whether you believe you can't and you fail the test, you prove yourself right. And it's the reinforcing cycles. It's the emotional baggage that keeps us down, keeps us low. But then if you think about the wordings, think about the amount of time, the attention, the studies on it, there's usually only 2-3 words people use: self-esteem, confidence, emotion. You know what I mean? But then think about the amount of terminology and focus on the actual dyslexia. There's so much, and a lot of my work. I say my work. A lot of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because the emotional side, people aren't focusing enough on it. People aren't dialed in, saying, okay, here's the strategies to prove it, because our brains are kind of the same in terms of, like, how things come about. Because with our brain, like, you know what I mean, how we create these beliefs and how we create the idea of ourselves, we have an experiences, then we create the meaning of the experiences, and that forms our so all a belief is, and a value, and all these things that we use to describe kind of who we are as a person and how our brains are molded, is all opinion about ourselves. It's all just an opinion. And our identity, a lot of it is all just an opinion about ourselves. Another way of saying this is, well, not an opinion, sorry. Another way of saying it is, it's a feeling of certainty. It's a feeling of certainty about something. And I believe it's always feeling about certainty. It's not true, it's not fact. This is a feeling of certainty. And so we got to deal with that, and we got to help to move that, like, for we got to understand it and realize that it's a feeling of certainty. We have an experience, we create meaning from that experience, and that becomes how we view the world. And starting from that standpoint, there's so much more I can speak about. There's so much more, but I remember coming to the end of these phone calls when people were saying, "Oh, this is exactly the information." Whether it's a parent going, "Oh, thank you so much," like the first person I spoke to who kind of knows what they're talking about, because a lot of the fights with the schooling system, and when it deals with something different outside the schooling system, it's like, because dyslexia is hard. But when you're dealing with the schooling system, when you're dealing with national systems that like different for country to country, and it's a whole load of, I want to say, mess. Because it's more complex than it needs to be. Like helping someone with dyslexia is just helping someone who's a bit different. You know what I mean? And you have to, like, it's very, very simple. If you actually understand it, it's very simple. It's very basic. But because in schools it can get a lot more complex, in schools, organisations, this and that, a lot more complex. And anyway, long story short, when I get off the phone with these people, my parents or adults with dyslexia, or kind of like young adults with dyslexia, and they're like, oh, I always get the sense that I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you in a sense, and asking them questions or whatever, and working on challenges. Then at the end of the call, I'm always have to, like, there's emotions. Like, I have to take, okay, a 5-minute rest. Like, I remember, okay, I have to go to the toilet, I have to walk to the toilet, I'm getting emotional. And maybe like a tear comes out, all these things. And I remember it happens again and again and again, and all I can think to myself is, this is what I'm meant to do. If you understand, this is what I'm meant to do, this is the right thing. Does that make sense? And I feel like so much for us is that, us as dyslexics, finding our own way in life is like sometimes one of the hardest things to do, but sometimes the most fulfilling things to do. The most fulfilling things to do, because I always, and whether we've found out about dyslexia recently, or whether, and we're, you know what I mean, in our like midlife, it's about marrying the two worlds, isn't it? It's about marrying who we are and kind of what we want, and the real world around us. And it's just, there's so much stuff I want to say, there's so much stuff I can say about it. But in the end, when something is right, when you feel like, this is it, I get this, this is a strength. When you're doing something in work and you're doing this little task that you can do a million times better than everyone else. When you're doing that thing where you're just talking to these people when you're on your sales, like, this is what I'm good at. Like, it's that little sparks where you go, hold on, I'm not struggling here. I'm not having to pretend to be someone else. I'm not having to pretend to fake it. This little thing I'm really, really good at. How can I do a lot more of this thing and just get obsessed on that? And the other thing is selling. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of dyslexics are good at selling. You could sell anything. Whether that's good at, like, organisation, a team. You can do that in a lot of different places when it's come to imagining and creating, like, a good vision for the future, and like this product or this idea or this thing. You can do that in many different aspects. But a lot of it is about going around and finding those little sparks through everyday life. And there's struggles. There's struggles that we face, and I don't have to tell you that we have to deal with them, and there's no way they're going to go away. There's ways we can work around them and improve upon them. There's no ways that struggles are just going to disappear. But it doesn't mean you have to let dyslexia stop you in any way. But when we're going through this everyday life, we have to look for things, look for moments, go, I know this. This makes, this is, I feel different. I've got a different energy here. And that would relay on. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want coaching, I'll leave a link down below. I'm doing a lot more of it. I've got my own plans. But it's completely free at the moment. And it's great. So guys, click link below to do that. I'm very busy with it. I'm going, so basically now, I've stopped doing that. I'm going to leave Thailand on the 20th. It's about 2 weeks till that point. I'm going to spend a couple of days in the temple and meditate and do nothing. Sounds interesting. I'm quite looking forward to it. I'll probably tell you maybe a few stories when I come back from that. But that I'll take a break from all this stuff. Anyway guys, take care, farewell, and bye.